Let's talk some sports, baby.
Taken by Iguodala. Iguodala to Curry. Back to Iguodala. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by Jones.
And remember, make tomorrow better than today and make today better than yesterday. And you know what we gonna do. We gonna holler at you until next time, baby.
Welcome to A Drink of Wisdom with Jay Wise and Nathan Drinkard. I'm your host, Cody Ward. Thank you for spending some of your time with us tonight. As a reminder to all our listeners, besides being on all your favorite podcast platforms, A Drink of Wisdom is also on YouTube with each show segment available. Head on over, and if you like what you hear, would appreciate your subscription. What's going on, fellas? We've made it a year. It's season 2. We got NFL previews. It's crazy. How's it going?
I ain't gonna lie to you. This football thing then snuck up on me with no preseason. We got Kansas City, Houston 2 days. But anyway, since it's catching up, we might as well get into it. Let's go.
Let's talk some sports, baby. It's been a while. I had to put a little neck into it. You know what I mean?
Well, we are glad you are back, my man. So, all right. Episode 2, season 2, episode 1. Get that right. We are jam-packed. We have NBA semifinal coverage and a mega NFL season preview. So let's go ahead and get into it with the Eastern Conference semifinals. We'll kick off tonight with just that. The Eastern Conference remains in full swing with one series potentially going 7 games and a top seed on the brink. And we'll start with the Raptors and Celtics, which Boston does lead 3-2 after a 111-89 victory on Monday. Jaylen Brown led the Celtics to an easy victory with 27 points, but they got quality starts from the whole starting 5. The Raptors couldn't keep it close with lackluster performances from Siakam, Van Vliet, and Lowry. So, Jay, what does Toronto have to do to push this series to 7 games?
You can go ahead and forget that. Should have put in a different question. This series is not going 7 games. Let's just think about, game 1 and game 5, which are 2 of the Boston wins in this series, they were complete whitewashes. Just Toronto is an inferior team to what Boston is giving you right now. And last night was a perfect example of that. Toronto has trouble scoring the basketball. These guys came out there and put up a grand total of 11 points in that first quarter. You're so far behind the 8 ball in that case that it makes it difficult for you to get back in the game when you already have trouble scoring. So that was the one thing that I was looking at coming in this series. Yes, Toronto is formidable defensively, but they're not all that impressive offensively. You don't have Kawhi Leonard to bail you out from time to time. And meanwhile, Boston, very balanced in what they do. I believe this is the second time all 5 scorers have been in double figures. And you also get some good contributions from Brad Wanamaker. He gave you 15 off the bench. And then meanwhile, you look at what Toronto did for you. You got virtually nothing. Norman Powell, Van Vliet had 18 for you, but Norman Powell is your second, the next man up with 16 points. Siakam and Lowry, they give you 10 apiece. Anunoby, who was the hero in Game 3, gave you 7 points. This series should be over right now because we all know, as much as we give credit to Kyle Lowry for that miracle pass and Anunoby for that miracle shot, that was another game Boston should have won. This series should be over right now. But we'll get a game 6, and credit to Toronto. They're scrappy, with Nick Nurse and the hair and everything, just coach of the year material. We get all that. But can I just bring your attention to, and we haven't talked about him very much at all. The Raptors have a guy playing center by the name of Marc Gasol. Could I interest you in what Marc Gasol is giving you in this series? He's giving you 5 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists. Now, that sounds terrible in itself, but also think about this. In 3 of these 5 games, he has as many fouls as points. In Game 2, he had 6 points, and he fouled out. In Game 4, he had 4 points and fouled out. And then last night, which was his worst start of the series, he had 0 fouls, so that's good, but he also had 0 points. I mean, just absolute anemic production from a guy who not too long ago was looked at as one of the best centers in this league. And he's not giving you anything on offense at all. So I assume the only reason he's out there is for his defense, because offensively he looks terrible in every way. And oh, by the way, another reason, Serge Ibaka after last night's game was in a walking boot, but his status is in question for Game 6. So it just looks – they look to be in awfully bad shape right now. Again, they don't have Kawhi Leonard, which I told you was going to be a very big deal because in that case, they don't have a closer. And again, this is one of the other things I told you. 3-point shooting of Toronto Raptors would be key. And I told you I was looking at Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet. Could I interest you in those numbers? Kyle Lowry, 8 for 33, 24% in this series from three. Fred VanVleet, 17 of 54. That's 31%. Together in this series in 5 games, they have taken 87 threes and made 25 of them for a grand total of 29%. That's losing basketball, and they're lucky that this series is still in play.
So, I think a more legitimate question is, how many spots do a Dalmatian have? Because
depends, but yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Who really knows the answer? And I say that to say this. What can the Raptors do? I mean, your 2 All-Stars combined for 20 points. 20 hot ones. That's what your 2 All-Stars combined for. What are we talking about here? And you're talking about you're playing in the bubble, right? Where it's not like, oh, there's series going back to Toronto. We can get some juice from the fans. Or, maybe something might happen in the travel plan and we might get an advantage. How normally the playoffs work. You going to the same hotel. You might see each other at the pool. Hey, I put 50 on you, and I might drop another 50, depending on how this massage goes. Either way, what can they do? Boston is a better team. That's just all it is to it. Boston is a better team. Don't give me the bull job of, hey, well, Toronto had a better record. Once again, we're talking about Wednesday night in Orlando, and then you wake up and you go do a back-to-back and you play, I don't know, the Lakers, in Toronto. It's so much that goes into the regular season. But when you get into the postseason and you're stuck with that one team for 7 games, that shows really how good you are. And right now, we're seeing the shortcomings of Toronto. They don't have a closer. Siakam hasn't really took that ultimate step of being that number one guy. Listen, as much as I like VanVleet, he's hit or miss now. And this is the VanVleet we seen in rounds 1 and 2 of last year's playoffs. But you had so much experience around Toronto, they was able to weather the storm. Toronto don't have that player that puts fear in the other team. They don't have that Kawhi. They don't have that guy that step on the court and you like, yo, if we mess around, this guy can win the game for the team. They don't have that. So Boston knows that. Boston is the more talented team, offensively and defensively. I know some people would say, well, Toronto got some all-defensive player, but so do Boston. I mean, Marcus Smart, he's a first-team all-defensive guard. Like, they have players, and they play good team ball. This is what I like about Boston. They're a good basketball team, and that matters at a time like this. So it's nothing they could do. Because you would need Siakam to just turn into somebody we don't even remember and start dropping 50. And you would need VanVleet to at least, give you another 10 points per game. You would need Lowry to really, ratchet it up with his defense and his three-point shot making. You're asking a lot. You know what I mean? This is I kind of equate this question to what they asked about the Lakers. Oh, well, what's wrong with the Lakers? Well, they lost Avery Bradley. There's no way they can replace what Avery Bradley was doing. I don't care who they put out there. They might put enough little pieces to make it look good, but you can't replace what Avery Bradley was doing. So if you catch a team that can, directly attack where Avery Bradley was at, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. The Lakers could do nothing about it. But that's how I look at Toronto. They just don't have the pieces. They need maybe another piece or so, and then they will be able to step up and play a 7-game series with these upper echelon teams. Because think about this, right? If they were to beat Boston, you think they got enough to beat Miami? Because that's most likely who they will meet next. I don't think so. I think they have a couple of pieces. They just don't have enough to actually win a 7-game series. So I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I don't think it's nothing Toronto can really do unless Boston just mail it in for the next couple of games, decide not to really give it a all, and then OG Anunoby gets another game-winning shot to keep him alive. You know, that's all I can see. But I think that old hourglass done ran out. Ain't no more sand in that joint. It's a wrap. Boston win next game. Boston go ahead and end this series, and we out of here.
Yeah, I mean, it really does feel like the Raptors have hit that ceiling for this iteration of the team. You know, they stole game 3 with that improbable shot. And in game 4, they really outworked Boston. But Boston came out, I think, in game 5, and they were the ones with the noticeable increase of defensive effort. Toronto's first 18 possessions, speaking of some stats here, they had 5 points on 2 of 15 shooting and 5 turnovers, scoring 11 points in the whole quarter. It's pretty bad. That's almost historically bad. I think that Boston set the tone there and just ran with that the whole game. Like Jay said, 2 of these games have been just stomps from the get-go. So Toronto can't be outworked. If nothing else, you're already behind the curve on raw talent and skill and all that. You can't be outworked as well because you don't have that Kawhi buffer anymore to make up for some of these deficiencies. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the Raptors could very well force a Game 7. Like, I don't want to completely write them off, but I don't think they're going to win the series anymore. I picked them initially, but if Boston lets this one get away, that would be pretty bad. So we'll see. That they should close that out in 7, if not 6. So let's go ahead and move over to the other matchup on the brink of quite the upset themselves. Miami Heat almost swept the Bucks Sunday when Giannis went down with an ankle injury 11 minutes into Game 4. However, the rest of the team did rally, led by a heroic effort by Chris Middleton, and the first overall seed did stave off elimination. The Heat still lead the Bucks 3-1, and of course, no NBA team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit, and Milwaukee will be without the 2-time MVP. Tonight. So assuming the Bucks don't make history, how do you see the future of this playing out with Giannis and the Bucks, Drink?
Well, I'll tell you like this. The Bucks definitely, the front office, you definitely better be putting in overtime. You better be ready to sweat this one out. I think Giannis going to make him sweat it out. I think he's going to take his time, and he's gonna weigh out the pros and cons of coming back to Milwaukee. Because here's the deal. People don't want to say this, but hey, I said, don't nobody want to come to Milwaukee. Like, the only reason you would get a player to come and team up with Giannis is because of Giannis. So if Giannis is not out here actively recruiting players to come to Milwaukee, it is a wrap. Because he have seen too many elite players before him get sucked into a team, lose, and then they go from being this all iconic great to being just a guy because they showed too much loyalty to a franchise. He done seen it too much. And I personally think, yes, will Milwaukee do what they need to do to offer him a crazy amount of money? Yes. Will he deserve a crazy amount of money? Yes. Will he take it? That is the question. And we'll find out when they offer that contract extension to him, if he opts out or opts in, that would say a lot. Because it might be unfair, but it's just certain franchises where it's easy to get people down there, like Lakers, maybe even the
Miami's.
Dallas.
Miami's another one.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you have these franchises where the location alone helps you bring them in. Milwaukee's just not one of those. Let's be real here. Cheeseheads, like, people ain't feeling that. Like, they're not like one of those teams. So we'll see. It'll be very interesting. And here's the thing. You got to think about Giannis in his whole ordeal. His team look like they're going to lose in the gentleman's sweep here. Giannis, your team also lost in 6 last year. Can I interest you in what happened the year before? Like, it's starting to become a trend. Now, listen, I would be unfair if I say this is all on Giannis, because it's not. It's not. But just like Jordan, early in Jordan's career, it wasn't all on Jordan, but he got tired of losing. Something had to happen. The first 7 years in Cleveland with LeBron, he got tired of losing. Something had to happen. So Anthony Davis, first 6-7 years with New Orleans, something had to happen. So it's becoming a trend where these superstars, they're not sitting around and just going to keep losing for no reason. So I to wrap it up, I would say this. If Milwaukee does not make Giannis feel as if they can get a legitimate player to help him. Because I'm sorry, but the first time I seen Chris Middleton really do something was last game. I'm gonna be honest with you. So you might be trying to shop Middleton now and try to get somebody else if Giannis gonna agree. But if we don't hear, okay, so if Milwaukee loses the next game, I say if we don't hear probably about a month after the championship goal, if we don't hear no extension like talk with Giannis, I think they're gonna try to trade him. They don't want to get caught in the Kevin Durant debacle where Kevin Durant opted out, and now it's like, well, we can't trade him now because nobody want to trade for him because they know he's leaving. It might be one of those things, or we get a Kawhi situation. Listen, this dude's so good, I'm willing to give up players for a one-year rental. Kawhi has opened the door for teams to think like that now. 1 year, he might just be good enough, and you build a team around him for 1 year, and you go like that. But it's very hard for me to see Giannis coming back to this team. I don't think he's coming back to this team. He came back this year. Okay, guys, we get in the gym. We work harder. We make more shots. We want the championship. And now you might be out in 5. I mean, COVID got something to do with that. But listen, that rah-rah stuff only works so much when we keep seeing you getting bounced out the playoffs. So eventually, 2-time MVP, back-to-back MVP. We gave Steph so much, flack for being a back-to-back MVP that don't show up in the finals. You got Giannis that's about to be a back-to-back MVP, and he ain't showing up in the first, second round, the third round. He's not even making it to the finals. So at some point, you got to put that nail in the coffin. I don't see Giannis coming back to this team as currently constructed. They're going to have to make some moves to make Giannis feel good if they want him back.
Yeah, you may very well be right, and we may be looking at maybe last year is the last year we see Giannis in a Bucks uniform. I don't see it that way. It's just a gut feeling. I think I look at teams like Milwaukee that really don't have a history of anything, and then you get a superstar, generational talent, and it's almost similar to what I told Cody a while back about Jalen Ramsey, even though Jalen Ramsey wound up leaving for a myriad of reasons, with faking injuries to get on out of there. And next thing you know, next week he's in, a different time zone and he's healed.
Those Dodgers, California, man, they're crazy.
Yeah. Glory.
Crazy tech out there.
And, but it's a similar thing. Jalen Ramsey, if he just stayed in Jacksonville, he could have been the best player in franchise history. That could have been the ceiling for him. And it's the same thing for Giannis in Milwaukee. And Milwaukee's got some issues right now, and they really could be a victim of the shutdown, because we know before the season got shut down in March, Milwaukee was point blank the best team in basketball. And shutdown happens, you have 4 or 5 months off, whatever it was, and for whatever reason, they never looked like the same team in Orlando. It just never happened. They had, after they lost game 1 against Orlando, they recovered nicely and they looked more like themselves. But we also got to remember Orlando was real shorthanded. No Aaron Gordon. They were missing Jonathan Isaac. A couple other pieces were missing as well, I believe. So, and then in this series, you lose the first 3 games. They just never looked like a full version of themselves, especially on the defensive end. I told you that from this pretty much the whole bubble. They didn't look like themselves defensively.
But this is a team with 2 all defensive players, 3 actually, 1 on first team and 2 on second team. So
that's right. That's right. They didn't look like. And I tell you what, in this bubble, in this playoff, they ain't look like all defensive players. I've seen nothing from Brook Lopez. And really, Eric Bledsoe, they've said, oh, yeah, all defensive talent right here. That must have been going on the first 60 games of the season, not the last 20 or so. But listen, you don't become a number 1 seed 2 years in a row and the best regular season team in basketball by a fluke. I mean, we know what happened last year. They got beat by the Claw. The Claw got them, and the Claw's got other teams before too. And then this year, I think they got by COVID a little bit. I really do. And another thing that they don't have, and we talked about this briefly before, they need a little bit of tinkering on their bench. You know what they need? They need a guy like Marcus Smart coming off their bench that brings you're always looking for one of those guys, not necessarily to fill it up like Lou Williams, but you need a guy to come off the bench and kind of bring the energy. They don't have anybody on their bench that really does. Energy, tough guy, Montrezl Harrell, Marcus Smart type of guy. And not to say those guys grow on trees, but they need somebody like that, and they don't have it. I mean, think about this. George Hill, Kyle Korver, Pat Connaughton, Dante DiVincenzo, Marvin Williams, and all of these guys are good players. But none of those guys, you come out there and they strike fear into you. Or
they don't intimidate you.
Intimidation, they don't have that dog in them. All kind of adjectives you could use for them, but they don't have anybody like that. And I also think, and I've said this before, I think Eric Bledsoe over Malcolm Brogdon was a bit of a mistake. I really do. I think having Brogdon around Giannis makes more sense in terms of having shooters. We know it's an age of one guy in the paint, 4 guys shooting, so we know how they play with Giannis. Bledsoe can't shoot. I'm sorry. And the last couple of games, and in game 4, and I believe is the way it's developing so far, now you're seeing a little bit more out of Eric Bledsoe because he doesn't have to be just another guy standing on the perimeter. He's got a little bit more, free flow to get to the rim a little bit more because it's not Giannis out there every time with the ball. So it's just a little bit of a fit thing for me. Milwaukee's right there. I don't see any reason why, based on kind of a legacy thing for Giannis. I think he's a guy that's got a whole lot of pride. I think he wants to see this thing through in Milwaukee, and I think they can still get this done. They just need a little bit of tinkering, in my opinion.
And hold on before you get into it, Coach. And I want to say this to your point that you made earlier, Jay. If Milwaukee win this game tonight, what is the headline tomorrow morning?
It's probably something to do with Milwaukee's winning without Giannis, which is just absurd. I would tell you this. Giannis, to me, there's no question. This guy is the MVP, back-to-back MVP. I don't think there's any real debate about that. Mm-hmm. I would tell you, though, you talk about Giannis coming up a little small in the playoffs. His teammates have come up more small than he has. The only really major criticism I have of Giannis in these playoffs is you got to hit free throws, man. You can't be coming out here having games where you're like 4 or 12 and we're airballing free throws. Other guys have to play better and make shots.
And I agree with your free throw point, but he needs to get a more consistent mid-range. He needs to make more three. Listen, all Toronto did to him last year was force him to shoot mid-range, force him to shoot threes, and force him to make free throws. And now we're starting to see that. If Giannis don't get a head full of steam and do the 2 steps from half court and get to the rim, if you make him set his feet and shoot a shot, you live with that because can he hit him? He's an NBA player. Yeah, he can hit him.
And to that point, he's improved. He's improved from mid-range and 3-point range. He's still not elite. He may never be elite. I don't think he has to be. But this also brings a point that we talked about last week.
Hold on. Let me finish my point right quick. This is why I feel that he won't come back to this roster as currently put together because he's going to want a player that can demand as much like a Robin to say that could demand some of the defense, some of the attention to help him develop. Because if you was to watch them tonight, and they don't worry about nobody else on that team. Even Chris Middleton don't really garnish the respect you think he would. They literally line up in a zone or a straight line and wait for Giannis to come try to fly through the lane. I forgot Giannis ain't playing tonight. I'm sorry. But my point is they line up in the offense, in the goal line defense almost, and say, come on, Giannis, you're going to have to run us over or something similar to that because we know you're not going to stop and shoot a 3. We know you're not going to have a mid-range. And we know the only other person that we really even game plan for is Middleton, and we know he's gonna come up short from time to time. So who else do you got? And I think Giannis is gonna bring that to the table. That's what I mean by that. But you're right. it is on the other players as well. And that's why I mean he's gonna need some fresh blood on that team.
You bring me to an interesting point that we touched on last week. You're referring to there seems to be a lot of offensive sets where Giannis comes up the floor and you've got 2 bucks on the right, 2 bucks on the left. Doesn't that point to coaching just a bit? I mean, you hear the phrase build a wall a lot. Why would you just default let the defense set up in a way to where their wall is already built? Wouldn't it be incumbent upon Mike Budenholzer to get the ball out of Giannis's hands at some point, run some pick and roll with Giannis as the roll man, or maybe let him run some ISOs on the left or right side, as opposed to always coming from the middle and the defense is already set up. It's easier for them to help. I think some of that's on Budenholzer.
Hey, I don't disagree. You're a coach. You get paid the money. You got to figure it out. That's what you get paid to do, make them adjustments. Don't disagree with that at all.
And I think that's one of the things you might see come out of this, because for Giannis, he's got to evaluate now if this future is with this front office and with this franchise. And the Ringer, they had a great write up on the topic. They went real detail, but some of the things that you pull out from it, I don't think Milwaukee's front office has been all in for him. I think the first thing you saw was when they let Malcolm Brogdon walk, and that was a pure financial decision. They didn't want to go into luxury tax. They didn't want to pay for him. They just let him walk, and they said we can get that production back with other people, whatever. But if you were all in, you would have went for Malcolm Brogdon. You would say, we'll figure it out. They said Giannis, when he was a rookie, that team was bought for $550 million, and now it's worth over $1.6 billion. He has made you $1 billion because, let's be real, since he's been drafted, he's been the only show in town. So it's ridiculous that this front office doesn't reciprocate that. You've kept all your first-round picks. You haven't made aggressive trades with them. And the guys you drafted really haven't done a whole lot for you. At best, you've gotten role players. There's one guy I think they picked a year or two ago that's already buried in the bench. It was a DJ Wilson, maybe. DiVincenzo has been up and down.
DiVincenzo and Connaughton, they're
regular season heroes, but haven't done much in the playoffs. And now you're tied to some of these harder salaries like Lopez, Bledsoe, Hill, guys you're not going to be able to get out from under as easy. And I don't think this organization has made it crystal clear they're going to do whatever it takes for Giannis to win. And he's only 25. He's got plenty of time ahead of him where if he doesn't feel that his efforts being reciprocated, he may very well go somewhere. Plenty of stars have done it, so there's no reason to think that he couldn't do it. But what I think he might do is they might get pressured in moving on from Mike Budenholzer. As good as he's been, as much as he's rebuilt and reshaped this roster into a competitive, first overall seed roster, he may be one of these coaches that just don't get it done in the playoffs. And we've seen plenty of stars with coaches they don't trust in the playoffs say, look, man, it's been great. You got us here, but we're moving on because you can't make the adjustments. And I don't think Mike Budenholzer has proven he can coach you through a series that you wouldn't have won otherwise. I think he's only giving you what your talent would give you anyway. And that might be another contention point where they look at the roster and look at this coach, and they may have to make some adjustments and they have to move on.